14 years, 4 months, and 19 days. I've been incarcerated.
How excited are you to see Ronnie and Wiley?
Well, I really haven't got a chance to meet him yet, see him yet. I saw him briefly in the courtroom, but I'm dying to meet him. I want to embrace him and hug him. Excuse me.
You know, I'm innocent, you know, and I've always said I was innocent.
I've been beat down by the law so much, you know, going appeals failing, appeals after appeals failing, no one listening to.
This is Daniel Villegas. In 1993, he was arrested and charged with killing 2 teens at the young age of 16 in El Paso, Texas. It was said that without an attorney present, a detective in El Paso threatened to beat Villegas and to execute him if he didn't confess, which led to the young Villegas signing a confession that the detective had prepared. After being charged with capital murder and 3 trials later, he went on to spend the next 16 years behind bars.
I would always try to keep my mind focused that, you know, I'm innocent and this ain't my environment, this is not what I'm supposed to be a part of, but, you know, sometimes, you know, you can't help it.
His 1994 trial ended with a hung jury. His 1995 trial ended with a conviction for capital murder and a life sentence. Fast forward to 2013, and the plot twists as Villegas' conviction is quashed, and he is sent out on a bond where he makes the most of his freedom by starting a family as he awaits his 3rd trial. During the jurors' deliberations on Villegas' future, he remained optimistic and reassured everyone that he was innocent and that he was confident within his legal team. Here's what he had to say.
I feel like, you know, we're gonna win this. It's just a matter of, you know, how much longer this is gonna take in my life right now, waiting for them to come back with the verdict.
With no solid evidence linking Villegas to the crime, within moments he will find out if he is a free man or gets to spend the rest of his life in jail.
We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
Villegas is now free to go. There are no longer any restrictions on his freedom.
The last thing I remember was riding in the back of the car with my mom, and she's handcuffed.
I never do that to anybody. I mean, I didn't hate Rick. I would never let anybody do something I hated.
This is Susan Mellen, a grandmother who spent 17 years incarcerated only for her conviction to be overturned. A judge ruling she did not commit the murder.
I believe, based on what I've read, that she's innocent. And for that reason, I think the criminal justice system failed.
It was a starry night in 1997 when Mellen was accused of killing Rick Daley and setting his body on fire. It was at a McDonald's where homicide detectives swooped, arresting Mellen in front of her young daughter as they waited for a Happy Meal.
I started crying, and then my mom was pleading to have asked them to drop me off at a family member's house.
Detectives questioning Mellen for hours as she pleaded her innocence.
Are you sick, ill, or injured? Do you have any medical problems? Okay, I'm gonna book you. No, I'm not gonna believe. I'm talking homicide. A man was murdered. All right.
Their probable cause? A testimony from an ex-friend of Mellen, who stated she had confessed the killing to her. The testimony that convinced a jury to put Mellen away for life. Now, 17 years later, Mellen's daughter Jessica can finally get that Happy Meal she wanted to share with Mom. A judge ruling that the testimony used against her was found to have been made by a pathological liar. Judge Mark Arnold revoking the sentence and declaring her innocent. It was only after the courtroom judgment that Susan Mellen really felt the full impact of her exoneration as the media waited outside to hear her side of the story.
What are you feeling right now?
Overwhelmed. It's kind of like when you have a child right after you give birth to a child, just so overwhelmed.
It was at this point that she would meet her grandson, jumping with joy. She realizes that this is what true freedom looks and sounds like.
Oh, my grandson! He knows me already. Get excited.
The Los Angeles City Council has now agreed to pay $12 million to Susan Mellen for her wrongful conviction.
Not having a father figure is difficult.
He is in fact innocent because the evidence will show that it undermines the prosecution's.
This is Luis Vargas. He was sentenced to 55 years to life in prison for offenses he did not commit. At the age of 29, Vargas was residing in Los Angeles, California, when he was accused of 3 sexual assaults. Based on the similarity between the descriptions of the crimes and a distinct teardrop tattoo under his eye, the police determined that Vargas was the perpetrator of all 3 attacks. Vargas was found guilty of all 3 attacks and sentenced to 55 years in prison. However, in 2011, after numerous appeals in state and federal court had been unsuccessful, Vargas sought assistance from the California Innocence Project. DNA from the surviving physical evidence and clothing from one of the victims was tested, and the results showed that Vargas was an innocent person, and that the prosecution's case was undermined.
The best thing about this case was that technology had advanced to the point where we were able to determine that this DNA could be used to show that this other person committed the crime.
Vargas sat in silence after being found not guilty of any charges.
I'm waiting for him to come home so I can do my big church wedding and be able to have him walk me down the aisle, which is every little girl's dream. And I can't wait for that moment.
In November 2016, Vargas filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles and Los Angeles County. A jury found in favor of those defendants in June 2019. In July 2017, California Governor Jerry Brown approved $886,000 in state compensation for Vargas.
A man who was sentenced to die, literally was on death row, has had all charges against him dropped.
And I thank you for it, from the bottom of my heart. 14 years, 4 months, and 19 days, I've been incarcerated.
This is Clemente Aguirre. In Altamont, Florida on June 25, 2004, Clemente, a 24-year-old Honduran national, was officially charged with first-degree murder and burglary. He adamantly proclaimed his innocence in relation to the accused crime, a crime that he did not commit.
I do know that nobody believed me back then, no one. Besides my mother, nobody.
It was a horrific crime that led to the discovery of his neighbor's 68-year-old Carol Barris and 47-year-old Cheryl Williams brutally murdered. Nevertheless, despite Clemente vehemently asserting his innocence, law enforcement singled him out as the sole plausible suspect. Consequently, he received a death sentence.
I didn't do it. I don't kill anybody.
Throughout the 14 years spent in confinement, Clemente never wavered in his pursuit to clear his name. His persistence proved justified as it emerged that Samantha, Shell's daughter, had been diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder before the tragic incident. Armed with this indisputable evidence pointing to Cheryl's daughter, the long-awaited day finally dawned for Clemente. Holding back tears, he immediately sought out his friends and family to share in the celebration.
I'm very happy, needless to say. You know, words can't express how I feel right now. I'm just glad to be out, glad to be a free man.
This is Ricky Jackson, incarcerated for more than 39 years for a crime he didn't commit. Businessman Harold Franks was killed in a robbery that took place in Cleveland, Ohio in 1975. Based on a 12-year-old child's testimony, Ricky Jackson, Wiley, and Kwame Ajamu were charged with the crime. However, the youngster later recanted, saying he had lied under the threat from police. Eddie Vernon, the 12-year-old witness, provided the majority of the evidence that led to the convictions of Ricky Jackson, Wiley, and Kwame Ajamu. The 3 men were given death sentences in 1975, even though there was no tangible proof connecting them to the crime site. The men continued to insist on their innocence throughout the years and made several unsuccessful appeals. It is among the longest-lasting wrongful incarceration cases in American history, with Wiley, Kwame Ajamu, and Ricky Jackson serving terms totaling more than 2 decades, more than 39 years, and more than 2 decades respectively. The main witness, Eddie Vernon, withdrew his evidence in 2011 and acknowledged that he had lied when he was younger. The convictions were reversed in 2014 by the Ohio Supreme Court, which ruled that there was insufficient evidence against the defendants, following decades of court cases and agitation by the Ohio Innocence Project. Jackson learns he's free to leave at this precise moment.
This case will be dismissed. Mr. Jackson, you're going to be free to go. I suggest to you that life is filled with small victories, and this is a big one.
Now that he's free, Jackson is outside for the first time.
How excited are you to see Ronnie and Wiley?
Well, I really haven't got a chance to meet him yet, see him yet. I saw him briefly in the courtroom, but I'm dying to meet him. I want to embrace him and hug him. Excuse me. because we've been through a lot together, and we made it. You know, we're here, we made it. Just because you're in prison, you don't have to be a prisoner. You got to be a man, you know? And you got to get yourself together regardless of what the circumstances are, and you got to press forward. You know you're innocent, and you got to keep fighting, you know?
The three men demanded payment for the years they had been wrongly incarcerated after being released from prison. The city of Cleveland agreed to pay a combined $18 million to three men who spent decades in prison for a 1975 killing they did not commit.